And moving swiftly on, the final item of business today is a members' business debate on motion number 7776 in the name of Christine Graham on I come in praise of local development trusts and other community initiatives. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who wish to speak in the debate to press the request to speak buttons now. I now call on Christine Graham. 7 minutes, please, Ms Graham.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Second time today you've had to listen to me, so I thank you for your forbearance. Can I also thank all those who signed the motion which allowed the debate to take place, and I would also welcome the gallery representatives of various trusts and community initiatives from across my constituency and remind them, not that they need to, of the reception afterwards to which the Minister has said, lest he forget, he will come, albeit briefly. The Minister also pledged an answer to me here last week in this very spot to set up an information website to assist communities to establish community trusts and to access funding. And there will be a questionnaire at the reception for you to fill in to inform that website structure. There's no such thing as a free nibble on my watch. Development trusts and community trusts, what are they? Why are they? And what do they do? Well, 14 years ago when I entered Parliament, I had no idea and no answer to any of those questions. As my granny would say, you ken noo. The motion refers to a sample I've come across in those years. Auchendinny building its community centre when the other building was quite literally falling down. It looks smashing now and fit for a Grand Designs visit. As is Silverburn's Community Hall, reclaimed from a disused water storage building. Silverburn is a small community, but it's got a lot of get up and go. In fact, the Beach Grove Garden has already been there to see the community garden they've also established. Newlands. The people of Romano and area were galvanised when their local school was threatened with closure, and they took it into their own hands to keep the school and add community facilities and fought for funding from the lottery, which was just over 800,000, not a hill of beans, and from other sources such as European funding. That, as they and I know, was pretty painful and stressful for them, but they got there. Other projects, such as Gorebridge Development Trust, has for a community hub well on its way to move from drawing board to build and has secured over £1 million of lottery funding. Pennycook Development Trust has its fingers everywhere and is working and secured some funding to restore the lost garden of Pennycook, and not content with this, has prepared a business case to establish a paper-making museum in Pennycook, which you should all know was the home of paper-making so long ago. And they do so much more. I should also mention the Great Polish Map of Scotland at Eddleston and that restoration project. Again, it has secured initial funding. All these projects, which not only give pride to a community but can generate income for the local community, generated by local people working locally. La Mancha and its community centre with its exotic barbecue hut, which I invite you to visit. And when I say hut, I mean posh Nordic version. Locked door, proper seating, places for candles and a proper barbecue centre. These people know how to do it and how to build within their communities, and that's just a few. These projects, although they have a lot in common, they're community-based, with a dedicated team of activists, quite often thanklessly doing it, in for the long haul, facing obstacles and learning pretty hard on the job, especially regarding securing funding. Ultimately, all of them have achieved community success, and I know that those are still in the drawing board will also achieve community success. But I know they've done it through blood, sweat and tears, and I know that the sweat and the tears quite often was literal. It took huge acres of stamina out of the parties doing it to stay with it. Yes, I will, yes.
Liam MacArthur.
I'm very grateful to the member for giving way. As she'll be aware, I'm sure development trusts are now a firm feature in my own constituency in Orkney. But one of the most interesting things about the development of the work is not just the projects they help deliver, but the capacity they build within the community, stretching beyond the usual suspects to bring in others who otherwise perhaps would have struggled to get engaged with those sorts of projects.
Christine Graham.
Yes, absolutely. When I say the few working very hard, it really is the few, and sometimes it's only when the building's actually going up and they're about to cut the ribbon to open it, the community realises what has happened on their doorstep and then begin to become engaged with it. Of course, that's not the end for the Trust. These buildings have to be used, they have to get resources, they have to get revenue in from the community using it, but I know that can be extremely successful. So quite often these development trusts and community trusts, their job has just continues into a different phase once the building is up and running. But I have huge regard for the people, and I'm not just saying this, I have really huge regard for people who take up the cudgels for their community. They tough it out and they stick with it, and they're not getting paid to do it, and they're not getting press recognition, and quite often nobody's patting them on the back. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do for their community, and they give it a kick start and say, this matters where I live. So they build for their communities, real buildings. I visited Newlands Community Centre. I've visited Silverburns Community Centre. I've been at La Mancha Hub. I've been standing right where the great Polish map of Scotland was before they made it a health and safety issue, because we're not allowed to do that now. So I've been to those places. The Lost Garden of Pennycook is a wonderful project, but needs a lot of work. And I can see how people in the early stages particularly have a really tough time. But what I have to say to everyone here, and I know other people will speak about community trusts in their area, is that they should take pride, the Development Trust, Community Trust, in what they build, a tangible example of their effort. And I'll tell you, not many politicians can say that, even after 14 years here. I can't point to a building I've put up or a community that I've done like that, but you have. And so my congratulations to you all. And for those communities who are a bit wary of doing it, speak to the other development trusts and community trusts in your area, see what lessons they have learned, and take something on for your own community, and it will have a reward in a building that you see going up, which the community will use and is the centre of that community for generations to come.
Many thanks. Now Colin Stewart Stevenson, to be followed by John Wilson. 4 minutes or thereby, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I note that the motion is some 103 words, nearly a minute to read it if you were to do so, but there are fortunately 4 words in it, and Scotland at large. Well, I'm at large tonight speaking on behalf of some of the people in the north east of Scotland who, like Midlothian and the Borders, are heavily engaged in trust work. In Peterhead, we've Peterhead Projects Limited, who are working on community woodland. That's about developing people as much as it is about putting buildings up. In Banff and Macduff, we have the Princess Royal Sports and Community Trust. They, of course, have buildings, they have gyms, they're making sure that people get fitter, but more fundamentally, they're going out and engaging with schools and with young people to show the value of physical exercise. In Portsoy, we've seen the Scottish Traditional Boat Festival grow under the local trust's aegis from the first year 200 people to now a festival where 5 figures of people come, and people come from Australia and New Zealand each year to participate in that festival. And they've taken on the salmon bothy at the port boat shed. They're into buildings. The Boyndy Trust, just along the coast from them, run a cafe, they run a community bus service, they provide training for 70 people who would otherwise find it very difficult to get into employment, and in the cafe they're procuring from local sources, supporting their own community. On the borders of my community, my constituency, the other side, but working within the Huntly Development Trust, there's a development trust in Keith, and of course in Buckie, through the football club there, through the Highland League and their work there, they're reaching out, using their facilities to reach others and make sure that their attributes are deployed, that people are getting fitter. And of course, we have little community harbour trusts for many of the communities around the coast, some of them extremely successful in bringing very old facilities back into reuse. I want to, in particular, talk a bit about Fraserburgh Development Trust. Fraserburgh, as a town of some 15,000. It's a town with probably over 20 languages. People have come from all over Europe, from all over the world. It's a town that earns its living the hard way in the fishing industry, both onshore and offshore. It's a town that's seen some pretty tough times, but is definitely on the way up, and Fraserburgh Development Trust is a very important part of that. They've been running community markets, Super Saturdays, to make sure that people know what there is good about Fraserburgh. It's not just the place with the Scottish record for wind speed in mainland Scotland of well over 100 miles an hour. It's actually a warm, friendly place, even if in the middle of winter it's far from being that. With the community garden the Trust's involved in, the Trust is trying to set up a renewables project. That will help them go green, but more fundamentally, it also will help them have a regular funding stream. They're working with Social Firm Scotland to look at taking over a local bakery. That will save jobs, but it will also create the opportunity to move on, the opportunity to provide others with locally sourced food of a good quality. They're working in the town centre, presiding officer, and they're working with a community health development officer. But fundamentally, as Christine Graham said, presiding officer, they're working through and with volunteers. And the volunteers, unlike Boris Johnson, who says the top % of earners in London should get knighthoods, it should be our volunteers in our community trusts.
Many thanks. Now call on John Wilson to be followed by Neil Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I congratulate Christine Graham for bringing this motion to the Chamber tonight? Can I also declare an interest in this debate and draw members' attention to my register of interest? Because what I'm going to tell you tonight is the story of a local community organisation that I'm actively involved in the village which I live in. The community organisation, very much run by the community, has a small dedicated staff team, one full-time worker and a couple of part-time workers. But what they do is they bring together 120 volunteers. And these volunteers deliver a community cafe. In 2013, there was over 12,000 visits to that community cafe. The community cafe also assists in the delivery of meals to elderly and vulnerable people within the community, and that assists over 180 people to live independently within that community. The community also delivered on a village park play area, a £500,000 project which the council said couldn't be done. And that project was designed and delivered by the community on behalf of the children and teenagers in that community. The community also organises 4 events a year, including a gala day, and this Saturday they'll be switching on of the Christmas lights in the village square. They also operate an autumn group, which brings together, and I can be a member, and I am a member of the autumn group, because it involves anybody over the age of 50. So they also assists young people to complete the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, and also creates employment opportunities for the people living in the area. As well as delivering help, and they also deliver training courses for people to participate in, with over 60 local people participating in first aid courses, flexible learning, IT and catering skills. These are opportunities that are opened up to community representatives and community members, which also encourage and let them apply for employment in other areas. They also deliver community transport. They have at the present moment 2 community-owned minibuses, with the option of trying to get a third community-owned minibus to deliver community transport in the village and surrounding areas. And what we've got to ask ourselves is, what does the future hold for communities who are actively engaged in this type of work? And we've got to ask the Minister, and hopefully he'll raise some of the issues tonight in his summing up. We look at the community asset transfer proposals that are coming forward next year. And we look at what my community want to do is create a life centre, which becomes a real hub, a real anchor for the community, so the activities they currently deliver are delivered within that community hub, and they can move forward with the ownership of that building and taking on that commitment to deliver these services. But we've also got to look at the Community Empowerment Bill. And what does that really mean for communities? And some of the work that's been described tonight by Christine Graham and Stuart Stevenson clearly shows the work that is being done by communities throughout Scotland, that they can actually deliver on their own with the correct support, the correct assets, and also to allow the hands-off approach, unfortunately sometimes that comes with a heavy hand by local authorities. Let communities develop, let communities grow, and they will deliver services within these areas. I should also make reference to the many funders who have actually shown their confidence and their trust in communities to deliver these projects. The Big Lottery, Coalfield Regeneration Fund, BBC Children in Need, Radio Clyde, have all given communities funding to allow them to deliver these services and deliver these opportunities for communities. And also put on record my grateful thanks for DTAS, which provides a great deal of support for communities throughout Scotland to allow them to have the imagination, the vision, and assist them to deliver on the projects that they need and they require and they identify for their communities. So, once again, thank Christine Graham for bringing this debate forward tonight. Thank you.
Many thanks. I call on Neil Finlay to be followed by Annabel Ewing. 4 minutes or thereby, please.
Thanks, Presiding Officer, and thanks to Christine Graham for bringing this motion forward. As a councillor in West Lothian from 2003 to 2009, I was there at the very beginning of the Developing Community Development Trust initiative in my county. In 2005-06, I saw the potential in the vast array of community groups operating in my home village of Falthouse, an ex-mining community, working-class ex-mining community, not without its challenges, but with great people and a lot of initiative. And I watched how, in that community, we had groups doing youth work, with pensioners groups, religious organisations, sports groups, etc., all doing fantastic work in the community, supporting people and trying to develop new projects, but also often competing for the same relatively small pots of money, some inevitably feeling frustrated and disappointed at effort going in to raise funds through grant applications that were ultimately unsuccessful. So what did we do? Well, at that time I got together with one council officer in the first instance, and I will name Paul White, who was a West Lothian council officer at that time, but now works for SCVO because he was very influential in what developed. Paul and I looked at what was out there and saw the Community Development Trust model as a potential opportunity to galvanise the community and take things forward. A year of often tortuous development work took place that was funded by an EU grant, and that allowed the concept and idea to develop in the minds of the groups who began to see the potential benefits of such a new organisation. And we were grateful to the encouragement that we received, particularly from Gore Bridge Community Development Trust. And I want to mention Archie Pacey, who's in the gallery tonight, because he was a great help and inspiration at the time when we really needed someone to come and give us a bit of a boost, and he certainly did that. Eventually we formed the Community Development Trust, a company limited by guarantee with charitable status. We appointed a very skilled board, a wide range of people at the helm, and I want to pay particular tribute to the chairman, Robert Russell, and other board members who have given up their time and effort over the years to make it a success. I myself served as company secretary and a director for the first 5 years of the Trust's existence, only resigning this year due to pressures of work, and I suppose I should declare that as an interest, Presiding Officer. Since the Trust was established, it has gone from strength to strength, growing projects and income as they go, because the whole point is to generate enough income to have the Trust sustainable. We employ staff. We've employed around 16 Future Jobs Fund trainees in an environmental project before the Tories scrapped the scheme. We currently employ Community Jobs Scotland's trainees, bought and transformed an ex-council office with lottery funding, grant funding from the Leaving Seat Trust and the CRT and others, which now has a community cinema, a soft play area. We host the Credit Union Dementia Cafe. We have a food bank drop-off point, a walking group, fruit and veg co-op, a time bank project and an anti-sectarianism project. They have meeting rooms, a conference room. We've held music festivals, organised Remembrance Sunday and host an annual fair and help recruit volunteers for their projects, but also projects of all the other community groups that operate in the area, and they do this because they have dedicated staff working at a grassroots level, helping to seek out the funding that can make things happen. And they don't themselves make everything happen, because that's not the point. They help others and they facilitate projects and grant applications that allow other organisations to grow and develop. That's part of the business plan. That's what they're supposed to do. It's a social enterprise working at the coalface, delivering benefits in the community. I'm very proud of the work that the Trust does, and I'm proud that I was involved from the start. Community Development Trusts do not and should never replace local government. That's not what they're there to do. I must say in my area that we could not have done it without the support of local government, and I'm very grateful to West Lothian Council for all the assistance they have given over the years. Thanks, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. Now call on Annabel Ewing, to be followed by Mike Mackenzie. 4 minutes, please, or thereby.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I too would like to congratulate my colleague Christine Graham on securing this members' debate this evening. I'm very pleased indeed to hear of the range of successful trusts and other forms of community models of engagement in other parts of Scotland. And as an MSP for Mid Scotland and Fife, I'm also pleased to report that there are a number of examples of successful development trusts across the region, from Callander Community Development Trust in the West across to, for example, Leavenmouth, my bus operation in Fife, and many points in between. And I would say that all of these development trusts are tremendous credit to their communities, and they do speak, I believe, to the determination of local people to make a positive difference to the lives of their towns and villages, and indeed in some cities of the neighbourhoods that they live in those cities. And in the short time available to me this evening, Presiding Officer, I would like to focus on one example which could not be closer to home, and that is the Comrie Development Trust, established in 2006 in the village which I am proud to call my home. And I would point out that I am a member of the Trust, along with over 700 other people. And I would also draw members' attention to my entry in the Register of Interest, where I did some work for the Trust some years ago to help with project support work. But from its inception, the Comrie Development Trust has gone from strength to strength, and it may be most well known for its successful navigating of the not inconsiderable hurdles in effecting the community buyout of the former MOD Army camp at Cultybragan, which lies just outside the village of Comrie. And this was a tremendous achievement for the volunteer board of the Trust, whose determination to succeed was truly inspirational. And I well remember the excitement when the deal was in fact secured, very much at the 11th hour. And I remember too the quiet delight of many villagers who had never in all their years, nor the generations of their families before them, owned land, and therefore the delight in finding themselves as the owners of land, as part of a community, having therefore a stake and therefore a say in what would happen to some 90 acres of land on their doorstep. And since the buyout of Cultybragan, we have seen progress being made on the community development of the site, and some of the Nissen huts have been refurbished and have been let out to local tradesmen and other businesses and groups. And we have seen also the relocation to the site at Cultybragan of a very successful, indeed award-winning event and outdoor catering company. We also have seen the establishment of very successful community allotments, alongside which Comrie and Colour, another Comrie voluntary organisation, has a very successful poly tunnel. We have established a community orchard, and I believe planning permission has also been obtained to develop sports facilities at the camp. We have renewables activity on the site, and we have the Trust running a carbon challenge project in the village. Work too is going on to create a heritage centre at the camp to reflect the history of the site as a prisoner of war camp during the Second World War, and much input from local people, importantly, has been secured to capture the stories of that time. So a lot of work has been carried out, a lot of work is still to be done. And whilst funding has been secured by the Trust to employ some members of staff over the years, it is fair to say that much of the impetus is still very much with the volunteer directors and the many other individuals involved on a voluntary basis in the various working groups set up by the Trust. And without their tireless contribution, very little of what I have outlined today would have been achieved. So I would like to add my praise today to my very local development trust. And whilst at the outset it was the new kid on the block in terms of community initiatives in Comrie, a village where there were already some 56 voluntary organisations, in addition to the excellent and hard-working Community Council, I think it is fair to say now that the Trust has become part of the firmament, for there is no monopoly, I would say in conclusion, Presiding Officer, on good ideas, and nor is there any ceiling which should be placed on enthusiasm and the determination to make a positive difference to the lives of a community. All volunteers share that estimable goal, and there is space and, I believe, indeed demand enough for everyone working in cooperation with each other to make their contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Call on Mike Mackenzie, after which we'll move to the closing speech from the Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to speak in this debate because it was partly my own involvement as a founding member of our Community Development Trust in my home island of Easdale that led me into politics. We were aided in our early stages by an organisation known as CADISPA, an umbrella organisation which continues to offer help to communities all over Scotland. I owe a personal debt to CADISPA's director, Dr Jeff Fagan, who taught me a lot about the concept of capacity building that Liam MacArthur referred to earlier on, and the wisdom of this approach. Rather than giving grants or advising how to get them, CADISPA's approach is unique in that the focus is on building capacity within our communities to meet whatever challenges they are faced with, now and into the future. This is the route towards resilience and towards true sustainability. If community development trusts are to help build a better future, then they need to be well equipped with the skills to do so. And as they do so, to learn from and in turn to teach others as they go. This is a mechanism that multiplies the effect that any single community trust can have on its own, and a method for building widespread resilience and sustainability into the fabric of our society. Sadly, in the current climate of economic difficulty, CADISPA is battling for its own survival, even as it continues to help other organisations. Presiding Officer, it would be easy to praise the remarkable achievements of the many community development trusts across the Highlands and Islands. I'm the first to pay tribute to the very many people who tirelessly and often thanklessly do so much for their communities. But I'd like to use this opportunity to deal with some of the problems these organisations face. And in order to set this in context, it's necessary to realise that many community development trusts were first set up in order to tackle long-standing problems which had been failed, sometimes for many years, to be tackled by public authorities. It's ironical, then, that a principal complaint of many successful community organisations and development trusts is that they're often given insufficient respect or assistance by the public agencies which they need to interact with. Indeed, community organisations are often faced with barriers erected for no other reason, I suspect, than that their very success sometimes challenges the authorities who had failed to help them in the first place. If we in Parliament have a genuine wish to empower local communities, then we have to recognise the iron-bound principle that power is neither created nor destroyed. It's merely passed from hand to hand, and empowerment of communities implies disempowerment somewhere else. Presiding Officer, we often have debates in Parliament about the balance of power between national and local government, but if we truly want to make a difference to our society, we should focus perhaps on taking power from local government and giving it more directly to local communities.
Many thanks. I now call on Minister Derek Mackay to close the debate on behalf of the Government. 7 minutes or thereby, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think this has been a very useful debate on the importance of development trusts and their place as community anchors, as key organisations who deliver services and realise the local potential that exists right across the country. And I think the number of members who have spoken that have been able to explain the local circumstances just goes to show that the impact that development trusts have had at a local level right across the country. And there are stories from right across the country that are quite frankly inspiring and I think will fuel the debate around where power lies in Scotland as further opportunities emerge. So I would congratulate Christine Graham in her own style for securing the debate and the next diary commitment, as well as the website that she secured by way of a ministerial response last week. I'm supported by civil servants who have understand the task at hand to ensure that the support provided to development trusts to be aware of further opportunities is delivered in light of the question last week. But Christine Graham very helpfully covered many of the issues around the support for development trusts, about realising local potential, about generating income, about being a social enterprise, but also about the obstacles that many organisations can sometimes face. Sometimes it's bureaucratic, sometimes it's resource, and sometimes there may be other barriers in the way, which other members have spoken about. And I hope that the work that the Government will be undertaking to support the third sector will address some of those obstacles, partly through the Community Empowerment Bill and a range of other actions that we're currently taking. I think one of the key quotes that Christine Graham used was communities doing it for themselves, and it's that sense of empowerment that makes the difference, not being disempowered, but having the tools to do the job. And that's certainly what the kind of conditions that the Scottish Government wants to create. And of course that was touched upon with Liam MacArthur's intervention around that sense of empowerment and capacity and delivery locally. Stuart Stevenson, not unexpectedly, gave us a North East perspective and explained how communities who have seen tough times have taken advantage of the opportunities that exist. Or John Wilson spoke about making things happen, and I think that is very much what development trusts do. They make things happen. They don't just debate the issues, complain and criticise, but they take projects forward and deliver projects at a local level on the ground. And very responsive nature was illustrated by John Wilson's description of the range of services that are provided, from lunch clubs to a whole host of other services. And you know, the quote that John Wilson used about the council official in this case explaining what couldn't be done was overcome by that community-led determination to make things happen. Asked a question around community asset transfers. We should behave right now as if the Community Empowerment Scotland Bill is already in place, because we know that community asset transfers work. We know that community ownership works. We know it's an incredibly empowering device to make things happen at a local level. A further number of cases outlined by Neil Finlay, who spoke of the experience in the mining community where despair was replaced by activity and a vision to deliver. And it's that kind of positive interventional approach that is, of course.
Finlay.
I want to reassure him there has never been despair in my community. There has always been grit and enthusiasm for to take things forward, not despair.
Minister.
I'm more than happy to take that intervention and that correction. And what I'm reflecting upon was the words of Jimmy Reid, who says the greatest danger to our society was despair, when communities feel disempowered and don't have the tools to do the job. It's those communities that feel empowered with the conditions and the support that can make the difference. And I think that's why the empowerment agenda that we're undertaking is certainly so important. So I would still commend the work within that particular area, and agree with the comment that this should not be seen as any kind of threat or replacement for local government services. It builds upon the statutory services, that which has been delivered by development trusts, yes, and other community anchor organisations as well. Annabel Ewing spoke of Comrie, the fantastic development trust there, of which I am familiar. And again, that issue of empowerment supported by community ownership helps make the difference in making projects happen. Making things happen, doing things for ourselves is a comment often repeated when it comes to development trusts and some of the projects that have been delivered. And finally, Mike Mackenzie spoke of the opportunities that have been realised through quite difficult economic times, and I think that just goes to show that from adversity can come great projects as we take advantage of the opportunities that exist. So through the Community Empowerment Bill that will transfer, I think, further assets into community ownership, through the expansion of the community ownership support service through the support we provide to DTAS. And I was delighted to meet Ian Cook earlier on today to discuss the Community Empowerment Scotland Bill. I think we can address some of the other barriers that exist right now to support and enhance community development trusts across the country so that we can upscale the great local-led work that we know is making a difference, so that the kind of success stories that we've heard about today can be further replicated across the country. Of course, best exemplified, as Christine Graham did, amongst the other members, but it is worth mentioning, the communities of Auchendinny, Gorebridge, Newlands, Pennycook, Silverburn, and of course the work at Eddleston in terms of the Great Polish Map of Scotland, who are some great examples of the Development Trust. And we will say, as a government, will continue to support and commend your work.
Well done. Many thanks. And with that, I now close this meeting of Parliament. Thank you all.